named Dr. Obadele Kambon, who is also a research fellow at the University of Ghana Institute of African Studies, who also teaches at the AUCC. Oh, you stopped now.
Long time ago.
Oh, okay. So he's no more at the AUCC, but he's still at the University of Ghana Institute of African Studies. And I call him Okunini. Yes, so that is that the tree version of doctor? Oh, okay. Okay. So we are going to do just some few minutes with him to introduce him to you on our cameras, so that next week we can go deeper into this topic and many more. But then you can visit him on his website at Bibitumi Kasa to get more from him. Get this microphone. And the bottle, so that his laptop can go this way a bit. Okay, so Kwame Denchi is on Facebook Live, and you can share the links as well. Okunini, you reach me as I say. Okay, Denchi. So quickly, our time is almost done. So first of all, want to know from you the Egyptian Book of the Dead. What is it made up of? What is the Egyptian Book of the Dead made up of?
First off, the appropriate name is a Book of Coming Forth by Day. Eurasians, these are white people, they call it the Book of the Dead because they tend to be very dead in the head and they never pronounce anything by its correct African name. So even when they say ancient Egypt, the name is Kemet, which translates to land of black people. So first off, the book is called the Book of Coming Forth by Day, and that's actually a very, very late version, because before that you have what are often referred to as the coffin text, and before even that you have what are referred to as the pyramid text. And that's the source of the Book of Coming Forth by Day. That's the source of the coffin text, and it forms the oldest religious text, spiritual text in the history of the entire planet Earth. And in that text you find all types of concepts such as the death and resurrection of the Holy Savior, Immaculate Conception, the idea of judgment after death, what has come to us as the 10 Commandments. You find all 42 there. So all of these concepts go back to ancient times. And when I'm saying ancient, I'm talking about over 5,000 years ago. You can still go there and read it carved into stone in the pyramids. You can go to the Temple of Seti the First. You can see a depiction of the Immaculate Conception there. You can go to the temple also at Komombo. You can see Imhotep overseeing the birth of the Savior. So all of these things you find are direct plagiarisms from African spiritual texts.
Okay, so but can there be something you can read the bed nature in hieroglyphics? Can you give us any line or quotes from the Medu Nature, or better still, the Book of Coming Forth by Day? That is kind of maybe the same in the Old Testament or the New Testament. Can you give us something like?
Very good. First off, it's not only the Book of Coming Forth by Day that was plagiarized. Also, you have the instruction of Amenemope. Also, you have the hymns of the Aten. So basically, when the Hyksos, these are the Eurasian invaders, when they came into Africa, they took so many different texts. So I'll give you some examples. So Amenemope, chapter 7, toil not after riches. If stolen goods are brought to thee, they remain not overnight with thee. They have made themselves wings like geese and have flown into the heavens. And this is Proverbs 23, 4 through 5. Toil not to become rich. So the original was toil not after riches. And cease from dishonest gain. For wealth maketh itself into wings like an eagle that flieth heavenwards. So the original one said geese. They said, let's change it to eagle and pretend like we came up with the thing. We'll continue. Amenemope, give thine ears and hear the words that are said, give thine heart to interpret them. In Proverbs 23:12, apply thine heart unto instruction and thine ears to the words of knowledge. Remove not the landmark from the bounds of the field, and violate not the widow's boundary. Remove not the widow's landmark. This is Proverbs 23:10. Remove not the widow's landmark, and enter not into the field of the fatherless. So again, you have just direct. And this is even biblical scholars will admit that, yes, this is stolen. This is actually, you can find it on Wikipedia in translation. So even if you can't read the Medu Neter, this is, very widely acknowledged. Also, you have Psalm 104, which is taken wholesale from the hymn to the Aten. Now,
the hymn to the Aten, as you call it, is it also from the Book of the Dead, as they call it?
No, the Book of Coming Forth by Day. I will ask you to cease and desist from calling it the Book of the Dead.
the Book of Coming Forth.
The Book of Coming Forth by Day.
By day, okay.
All right, the Book of Coming Forth by Day.
Yeah, I just saw it recently online, and I'm trying to get the name into my head.
Very good.
Yeah.
So this is one thing
you mentioned a quotation.
Yeah, this is Psalm 104, and they date that to around 1000 BCE. That's about 3,000 years. And Akhenaten's hymn is 1353 BCE, so just about 350 years in between the original and when it was stolen and plagiarized. By
so give us the original.
Right. So the original, the world is in darkness like the dead, every lion coming forth from its den, all serpents sting, darkness reigns. Psalm 104. Thou makest the darkness, and it is night, wherein the beasts of the forest do creep forth. Young lions roar after their prey. So we started off with the lion, they end off with the lion, but they kept the same thing. Basically, this is an issue of when you have the original text in Medu Neter, now they're translating it into Hebrew. When thou risest in the horizon, the darkness is banished. Then in all the world they do their work. The sun riseth, man goeth forth unto his work, into his labor until the evening. All trees and plants flourish, and this is the Aten is talking about the solar disk, the sun in the sky. All trees and plants flourish, the birds flutter in their marshes, all sheep dance upon their feet. So now, Psalm 104, the trees of the Lord are full of sap, just like you just said, wherein the birds make their nests. Ours was the birds flutter in their marshes. The high hills are a refuge for the wild goats. We said all sheep dance upon their feet. The ships sail upstream and downstream alike. The fish in the river leap up before thee, and thy rays are in the midst of the great sea. They start with, so is this great and wide sea, wherein the thing creeping are innumerable, both small and great beasts. There go the ships. So we started with ships, they ended with ships, but they kept the whole thing wholesale plagiarism. Now, I teach at the university. If a student brought me a paper that's plagiarized like this, I would send them to the VC and say, you have to get this person expelled. They are copying other people's work and claiming that it's their own. Well, we'll continue the last one. How manifold are all thy works? That's the original. O Lord, how manifold are thy works? That is the plagiarism. Thou didst create the earth according to thy desire, men, all cattle, all that are upon the earth. And in wisdom thou have made them all. The earth is full of thy creatures. Right? So again, this is what we call plagiarism. Or we could
I heard you saying at the program that you cannot quote the Bible anywhere to support your argument because it's a plagiarized book.
Exactly.
And you still stand by the fact that the Bible is a plagiarized book.
Very good. I would say 50% plagiarism, 50% lies. Now, the plagiarism is what we've given. The lies are that the Hyksos came as invaders. They came into Kemet as invaders.
For the level of our listeners, when you say Hyksos, who are you referring to?
Very good. Very good. So in ancient Kemet, they referred to them as Heka, Hesut, which are the rulers of foreign lands. They're also referred to as the Amu. These are the Eurasians. And when I say Eurasians, it's because Europe and Asia is really just one landmass, Eurasia. Okay. So this includes the Arabs, this includes the Assyrians, this includes the Persians, so forth and so on. Okay. All of those are the Eurasians. The people who are living in what we now know as Egypt, those are the Eurasian invaders who just came with the spread of Islam. Yeah. So in ancient times, the people were blacker than any Ghanaian you would ever see. But nowadays, because of invasions, you have invaders who are still on occupied territory. The original name was Kemet, land of black people, but when you go there,
you don't see black people
until you go to the south. once you get to Aswan, which is still in what we now know as Egypt proper, that's where you start to see darker skinned people. You get to Abu Simbel, and they call themselves Nubians. So you can go there, go to the Nubian village, and that's where you start seeing people the complexion of yourself and myself. So they are still there, but again, when you're thinking of Cairo, this is in the north, and that's very close to where they came out of Eurasia as invaders. So the Hekahesu, these are the rulers of foreign lands. So they came as invaders. They use a base called Hutweret, which is in the delta, and they use that as a launching platform to take over much of Kemet. And it wasn't until the time of Yahmos, that he was able to finally expel them and drive them out. And this is recorded on the Tekken, that is the obelisk of Hatshepsut. So if you go to Karnak, you can actually read it in the Medu Neter, but of course that's also been translated, where she says that she raised up for the first time what was ruined by these Amu, which are these Eurasians who came in as invaders, the rulers of foreign lands. Also Kamos, in his stela, he says that look at the destruction that these Eurasians brought when they came in. So they came in, they brought destruction, and then they were driven out by Yamos. Now, in their version, they said they were enslaved, and then they were able to run away. So this is why
that's the story of the Exodus.
Exodus, exactly. So the Exodus, you can actually go to Waset, which is what they now call Luxor, and you can see the mummy, the mummified body of the ruler Yamos, who was able to drive them out. However, all their characters, you can't find any bodies of any of them. So show me the body of Moses. You can't find it. Show me the body of Jesus. You can't find it. We'll say, oh, well, he flew up into the sky. That's why. Show me the bodies of any of them. So all of ours are carved into stone, and you can still see the bodies of these.
And the mummies are even there with.
They are there right now. I actually have a photograph that I took from the museum of Yamos. But when we look at the name Yamos, you'll hear the names Yahweh, Yahovah, so forth and so on. That's where the Yah is coming from. That they didn't say that was the.
What's the meaning of the Yah?
That's exactly where I'm coming to. That was a deity of the moon. It was a moon deity. So when you have the name Yahmos, it means one who is born of the moon. So if you just hear the name Moses, it's an incomplete name. It would be like just saying my name is Dele, where you're like, well, what comes in front of the Dele? It has to be Shango Dele, Ogundele, or Badele. There has to be. So if you're just saying Moses, you're saying. So they switched the actual history from Moses was the one who drove them out to say, oh, Moses saved us and blah, 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 blah. So this is why I say that the plagiarism is there. The story of parting of the sea, that you can find in the story of the Golden Lotus, which dates back to Seneferu, who was the father of Khufu, who built the Great Pyramid. So this is now talking about what is known as the Fourth Dynasty. So that story has been there in Kemet. You have, again, as we already mentioned, stories.
So I think we can have special days to take these stories one by one.
Yeah.
Like the Exodus.
Mm-hmm.
You believe it never happened.
No, I don't deal with any belief. I only deal with historical documentation. And I think that this is what we are getting at, is that we need to go away from the fairy tales and replace all of these fairy tales only with historical documentation. What was carved in stone, specifically by our African ancestors, so we would never have to resort to belief. You understand?
Yeah, you've really pricked my mind. Something that I never thought of, that we have concrete evidence.
Exactly.
And we are told stories that you can have concrete evidence to. But recently, some pastors on government delegation have traveled to Israel, going to see the remains at places where Jesus lived and all that.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on that?
This is very good. I actually want to do a presentation at Institute of African Studies. What was Israel with relation to black people? Black people meaning Kemet, because again, those were interchangeable. When you say Kemet, you're saying land of black people. The very first time Israel was mentioned anywhere on the face of the entire planet, this is before Bible, before anything else, it was in the Stela of Merenptah, which I actually took a photograph of. I can show you the photograph. And Israel is listed among the many enemies of black people, right? So this is the first time Israel is mentioned anywhere, and they're mentioned as the enemies of black people because, again, these are the descendants of the Hyksos who came as invaders and were finally driven out. And I'll read the quote. It says, "The princes are prostrate, saying shalom. None of the 9 bows lifts his head." Bows as in bow and arrows. This is how we refer to our enemies. None of the 9 bows lifts his head. Shehenu is vanquished, Kati at peace. Canaan is captive with all woe. Ashkelon is conquered. Gezer sees. Yanoam made non-existent. Israel is wasted, bare of seed. So in the list of all of those who were finally subdued, they came as invaders. We were finally able to subdue them. You can actually see the carving of Merenptah, where he's blacker than any of us put together. Kor has become a widow for Kemet. All who have roamed have been subdued by the king of Upper and Lower Kemet. Banare Meramun, son of Re, Merenptah, content with Ma'at, given life like Re every day, Re being the sun. So again, this is the very first time Israel is mentioned, and it's mentioned as the enemy of African people. And then
in which document is that?
That is the Merenptah stela. You can actually go and see this stone carved into stone, exactly what I'm telling you. And then in the tomb of Ramesses III, you can actually see a depiction of these exact same, what we would refer to as Israelites. You can see very clearly that they are not depicted as black. The people of Kemet are depicted as black because their name even means black people. But then you see the Amu, and they are depicted just like these invaders that you can see right now. And I can see people coming around because they want to see the Amu.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Amu. These are the Hyksos. You have two different types. These are the people of Kemet, 1 and 2. Both of them are black. These are the people of Nubia, the Nahasil, and they are depicted just like the people of Kemet. So in our own view as African people, we showed that the people of further south, which is what we now refer to as Sudan, so forth and so on, where they're still very, very black, blacker than this, that they are depicted as the exact same as the people of Kemet. You understand? However, the Amu, who we listed amongst our enemies who came in as invaders and they were driven out with their tail between their legs, they are depicted just like this. So all of the people who say, oh yes, well, that must be us. If they're the chosen people, then it must be black people. We must be the chosen people. We must be Israel, so forth and so on. This is really why I want to do the presentation, because when you have no historical documentation, when you can't read or see the pictures of our own ancestors, what we carved into stone, then what we end up doing is that we say that were our own enemies. Mm-hmm. We identify with our own enemies.
Yeah, because that has been going on. Black are the Israelites, and so one. So we will have to soon end the show because the next show is upcoming. But before we leave the studios, what is the essence? Some will say that okay, black people are looking at what these Eurasians have done, want to write themselves in there. So that is why this book, the book of Comfort by the Day, is popping up. What can you use to defend that?
We shouldn't have to defend anything. These are people who are steeped in abject ignorance. They know absolutely nothing other than what their enemies have given to them. And the metaphor that Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen did, he said, imagine if I do a huge feast and someone comes and eats it and then they vomit it up. What we are doing is we're taking that vomit and trying to sift through and find African spices. Whereas we can actually
when we go through by the Bible to find out who we are or whatever.
Exactly.
It's like going for somebody's vomit and sifting through to find
all this breakfast in here. Oh, look, there's India in here. Oh, look at this, look at that. So why would we do that when we can actually go and read the original recipe that's carved into stone? And these are photographs where you can actually see carved into stone exactly what is what and who is who. And then we have to deal with order of operations. This one was in existence before there was anything called Israel. So I mentioned that Merenptah, this is the very first mention of Israel anywhere in the world. And this is long after, to the tune of 2,000 years after we were carving the pyramid text. So again, it's not a matter of, how do we defend it? What we have to do is we have to provide knowledge. All the things that we are seeing around us is as a result of abject ignorance.
Okay.
You have people, they can't read anything. We're basically functionally illiterate. When you go to the text that your own ancestors wrote, you look at it and say, look at the pretty pictures. Oh, is that the bird? Oh, what is that? Is that a cow? You can't read anything other than what is in Latin text. The Latin script. So if you're writing Ex-Lab Africa, this is Latin script. And what this is doing is it keeps you away from the majority of human history that was written by your own African ancestors. For 4,000 years, we wrote this language. Now, if you can't read, and we're talking about written documentation, written history is only around from just a little over 5,000 years. So if you can't read 4,000 years of it, that means that you are cut off from the majority in terms of time of human history. Everything that your ancestors wrote down so you know who you are and who your enemies are, you can't even access it. But what you can access is what your enemies brought to you as they were planning on enslaving you and colonizing you and raping you. Because even as we were talking about the original concept of the Holy Trinity, that you can find that in the pyramid text, right? So with that, if you are only able to go to, the Eurasian version, if you go to Europe right now, you'll see images of the Black Madonna and Child, which is based on Set in Heru. So you go all throughout Czechoslovakia. There are over 400 statues and paintings and depictions of the Black Madonna and Child. So the question now becomes, how come when they came to bring you so-called Christianity, they left all the black images of Jesus? Because that's just, a metamorphosis of the Heru. How come they left that black version in Europe, but they only brought you the white version?
Okay. This word, Amen. When we pray, we say Amen. In the name of Jesus, whatever. Amen. Some are saying that Amen is happens to be Egyptian god, and therefore when we pray and end it with the word Amen, we actually praying and ending it with in the name of that Egyptian god. Who is Amen?
Yeah, so Amen is the divinity. It's the same thing that if you know that I'm born on Saturday and I greet you Machi, you respond with Yeah, Amen. It's the same as the Dogon. The word for their creator is Ama. You understand? When you're saying Miminida, it's the exact same thing. In Rwanda, Kenya, Rwanda, when they talk about the creator, they say Imana. It's the exact same thing all throughout the African continent. And what I'm showing is pictures of the temple of Amen. And this is the largest spiritual complex in the history of the entire world. So you can go here, and Amen was often depicted in ram form. Right? I hope you can see. And I'm sure we can get it to the people who are online as well. But this is the temple to Amen.
Yeah.
And in here, it was built in alignment with the winter solstice. And all kinds of people make pilgrimages to this temple to this day, because on the day of the winter solstice, the sun rises and it comes into perfect alignment where it shines into the Holy of Holies where the statue to Amen was held. So all throughout here, this is all the temple to Amen. So when you're saying Amen, you're actually indeed evoking this divinity. And again, you can see it in the name Tutankhamen. When anyone hears King Tut, Tutankhamen, so it's the living image of Amen. You also have it in Amenhotep, which is Amen is at peace. You also hear it again in the prayers. After you say your prayer, then you evoke the deity that is actually going to give you the power to make the prayer actually come forth. But again, this is a temple to Amen. All of the rulers, they helped to expand this temple complex.
Okay, we actually behind time. So before we leave, and next week we dive deeper into it. What was that the book of coming forth by day meant for the ancient Egyptians or the Kemet people?
Right, so initially I mentioned that there were three phases. The first one was the pyramid text, then the coffin text, and then finally the book of coming forth by day. So that's actually a very, very late one, so we shouldn't start with that one. But the original idea of the pyramid text was in order to assist the ruler to join the imperishable stars. If you do any astronomy, you'll notice that the stars at the North Pole, they never seem to set because they're right there at the axis from where we are. Whereas all of the other stars, they seem to come and go. It's like they rise and then they die. They rise and then they die. So the idea is that let's build these pyramids in alignment with these stars at the North Pole, so that then the ruler will go and join those stars. We have this idea that the stars have an impact on our life. You understand? So if the stars have an impact on our life, let's send a representative in the form of the ruler to go and join them.
That is when they die.
Exactly, when they die. So if you ever get a chance to go to Kemet, you'll see that there's a museum right next to the Great Pyramid, which is called Mur in ancient Kemet. And that in that complex, they have this huge boat. And the idea was that after the ruler passed on, he would use this boat in order to spiritually ascend into the sky and then join the imperishable stars.
Was it just symbolic?
At that point in time, you can look at it as one of the world's first major science experiments. So they had the idea that if they perform all these rituals correctly, if they do the tomb in alignment, if they do all of these things, then the ruler can now intercede on our behalf, those who are left behind on the earth, and go in to join these imperishable stars. So in the pyramid text, that is the point of the pyramid text, but it's also alluding to the Holy Trinity. It's alluding to all these other things in the course, and it's huge text. So you have the text of Winis, you have the text of Pepi, you have the text of Teti, Merenre, all of these ancient rulers. Now that was the pyramid text. That was the point of the pyramid text. After it was realized, because we would also do stargazing, we would also do the astronomy, and we realized that there's no change in the configuration of these imperishable stars. There's not a new one that's been added. So at that point in time, we stopped building pyramids. You understand? It's like we were trying to do something. We realized that this is not working. So then we stopped building pyramids, and then you have the rise of what are called the coffin texts. So we stopped looking at the afterlife as being in the stars to think about the afterlife as being under the ground, because at the end of the day, everyone gets buried. So therefore, if you have, the wherewithal, then you can have a coffin that's inscribed with similar text to what was found in the pyramid, which was only for the ruler. So now anyone, aristocrats, bureaucrats, all of them would have these types of texts, philosophical texts, talking about Holy Trinity, talking about death and resurrection, talking about the 42, affirmations of Ma'at, which were whittled down into the 10 Commandments, because
you talk about Ma'at for my listeners. What's Ma'at?
So Ma'at is the world's first ethical and moral system on the face of the entire planet.
So can that be, as you say, the Bible was plagiarized from all this text? Can that be
the 10 Commandments are directly plagiarized from there. This is the ruler that I was talking about, Yamos, who was able to.
So can you give us, before we leave, can you give us one or two commandments from that 42 text that is now in the New Testament, the 10 Commandments?
So for example, you would have, I have not killed, I have not stolen, I have not diminished offerings, I have not polluted the water, I have not caused anger, I have not caused a person to cry. You have to say all 42, because the idea is that your heart will be judged in the afterlife. So this is the very first concept of judgment, and after this, so people say, oh, judgment day, judgment. It's coming from these pyramid texts, coffin texts, and then the book of coming forth by day. And the idea is that in the afterlife, your heart, which is your witness, anything you do, you think no one saw it, but your heart was there with you. So your heart is weighed against the feather of Ma'at. Again, Ma'at being the world's first legal and moral system. And you have to be able to say each one of these. I have not killed. You understand? I have not lied.
So
I have not stolen.
Just opposite to the 10 Commandments, let me see.
So the 10 Commandments, they said that they can only do one, and they put it in terms of thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not whatever. For this one, you have to own it. You have to say, I have not done this, I have not done that, I have not done this, I have not done that. And there's 42 of them, as opposed to 10. They said we can't do 42. These are the Eurasian invaders, who we now know as Hebrews. In ancient times, we refer to them as Hyksos and Amu, and so forth and so on. And actually, in ancient times, Josephus Flavius, he was the very first one, one of the first ones, because he also followed Manetho in a text called Contra Appion, which is against Appion. He was defending Jews, defending the Hebrews, but in it, he was making this exact same connection that the Hyksos, who invaded, that those were the exact same people who went on to found Jerusalem, found Israel, so forth and so on. So this isn't a new idea. You can find this over 2,000 years ago in this text, that these are the same folks. You can find it in the Stela to Hatshepsut. You can find it in the Stela of Kamo, so forth and
okay,
so on.
I think we are ending it here so that next week we'll continue. But finally, how about homeschooling? And you are homeschooling your kids, and even have other people's children that you take them to homeschooling. How flexible is homeschooling? Because to our mind, it sounds so a bit difficult. And what is the advantage of homeschooling against classroom?
Yeah, one of the main advantages is that you don't have to deal with miseducation, diseducation, and anti-education. All of the problems that we see in our society isn't because that we are corrupt by nature or whatever by nature, that this is the direct and intentional end result of a process of miseducation. So if you don't know anything about yourself, if you think you've never done anything worthwhile, the society that we see around us is the end result of that. But once you actually learn about this is the depiction of Amen. You can see him depicted as jet black. And this is coming from an Ostrakhan where you have Djibouti Mes, that's what they call Tutmos the Third on one side. Then they have Amen, depicted as blacker than all of us in this room put together here. So this is the type of information that you should even learn from Kresh. Why do you know about Shakespeare but you don't know Ptahhotep? Ptahhotep wrote the oldest book in the history of the world. So why wouldn't you know about him? Because he's black, and they don't allow you to know about him. How come we know about Queen Victoria but we don't know about Sobek-Neferu? Sobek-Neferu was the world's first female ruler of a nation state in the history of the entire planet Earth. So how come?
And by it looks like today women have to beg to become leaders.
And so this is the thing. If you don't know that you are at these heights, you think, oh, well, I started off here, so look, I've made progress. You understand? But you don't know that you are coming from here. You understand? But this is the thing. Is the metaphor is like, imagine you have amnesia. So you walk into X-Lab, and then something hits you on the head, then you don't know where you came from. So now how do you know where to go back home and get your clothing? You start smelling in the streets, and you don't know where to get a bath because you don't remember anything. This is our situation as African people. So all of the problems that we talk about in society, whether it's doomsday, whether the roads are bad, whatever, that is the calculated and intentional end result. So we complain about those things as though those are the causes. No, those aren't causes. That's the end result of an intentional process of not letting you know anything about yourself as an African.
Okay, so for you, that is why you chose homeschooling over the regular classroom education.
Because I teach at University of Ghana, and I ask my students, I do a needs assessment. This is what we do. We try to find out what do you know and what do you not know. So I ask them, all right, have you ever heard of Imhotep? They said, what is that? Did you sneeze? What is that? Huh? Oh, I saw a movie where that was the evil main character. Is that it? You know, that's the world's first multi-genius who was an architect who built the world's first monumental stone structure. Why wouldn't you know him? But that's not all he did. He was also the vizier. It's like the equivalent of what we call a prime minister today. So one, we have architect. Two, we have a genius in the area of politics. He started off as a commoner, but he rose to that because of his mind. He also wrote medical texts to the point where Hippocrates, if you are a doctor, you have to cite the Hippocratic Oath. Hippocrates worshipped Imhotep, saying Imhotep was the father of medicine. And they call him Asclepios in Greece, you understand? But that's not all. He also, I've mentioned the medical text, he also wrote mathematical texts. So when I'm talking about the world's first multi-genius, don't you think that, objectively speaking, jet black, don't you think that's someone important for you to know? And we can tell he's black because we've never heard his name before. You think a white man, they would let any white man who did all of those things go and you won't hear of him? They make sure that any white man who sneezed or any white woman who coughed, you better know their name. So whether it's Florence Nightingale, the very first female physician was, again, in Africa, Pesachet. Now, has anyone here ever heard of Pesachet? No. Because she's black. But I bet you've heard of Florence Nightingale.
Yes.
You understand? So this is even the criteria. They say if it's a white person, you better know their name. If it's a black person, you will never hear their name. And then the end result of that process is a society. And look at the motive behind it. Because once you think that you are worthless as an African, once you think you have never done anything, well, now you have to wear the clothes of people who are worthwhile and who have done something. So now all of us will be wearing suits and tie and T-shirts and everything else. Montreal, everything that we're wearing. Not to pick on anyone. Yeah. But they're laughing all the way to the bank because that is the intentional end result that they were hoping for. Once I told you you're worthless and I told you that I did everything in the world that's worthwhile, don't you have to go and wear the clothes of people who are worthwhile? Once I tell you you're worthless, don't you have to change your hair from being full human being to something that looks more like a horse or a rentier or something like that? Don't you have to bleach your skin? You understand? So people will go to church and mosque all day and say they're praising the Creator, but at the same time they will say the Creator made a mistake because they made my hair human. I want hair like a horse or like a pig or like a goat. You understand? But that's the end result. You could predict it. So if I just wanted to get rich, I would say, I know all these black people have been taught to hate themselves, so let me go invest in bleaching cream.
Okay, Doc, finally, so you've told us why you are teaching your kids at home instead of taking them to school. Finally, what would you say teaching your kids at home are getting, let's put all of this, the education aside, are getting that those of the other kids in regular classroom don't have?
Well, one is that at our school, I teach all subjects in Chi. So I teach them math, I teach them science, I teach them astronomy, I teach them philosophy, I teach them spirituality, all in Chi. And this is one thing that we invented all of those concepts. We invented all of those, the very first mathematical.
You mean black people?
Black people, African people. Those are synonyms. When I say black, I mean African. When I say African, I mean black.
Okay.
Don't get it twisted.
Okay.
Right? So we invented those, the very first mathematical instruments called the limbombo bone, 35,000 years ago. Prime numbers, multiplication, division, all of this you can find this 35,000 years ago here in Africa. And that one isn't the Nile Valley. That's talking about southern Africa, between what's now Swaziland and South Africa proper. So if we did this, if we invented it, why can't we discuss it in an African language? Meanwhile, I'll ask my students at the University of Ghana, oh, did you learn math in Chi? They'll laugh. Like, oh, you can't do math in Chi. You understand? But this is the degree of brainwashing. What type of society would you have if you think that if one, you don't know you invented it, but you don't even think you can do the concept in your own language? So if I say, oh, me pe Ghana city insien, I say insien, what is it? What is it?
But when I call you, where have you reached? He said, there's Samsung. I have to ask 2 times and I say, oh, it's 37. Finally, you know, the last time we were here, you said the Igbo language is a mathematical. Is it the Igbo or Yoruba?
We talked about Yoruba last
Yoruba.
time.
You said it's a mathematical language.
Yeah.
So give us just an example.
Yeah, to say any number, you have to do mathematical calculations based on 20. It's a base 20 system, but all African languages are mathematical languages, whether it's base 10, base 20. So I'll give you an example. If I want to say 60, Ogota, that's Ogun, Meta, that's 320s.
That's Yoruba.
That's Yoruba. Ogota, so that's 320s. If I want to say 59, I have to say Okondinlo Ogota, which is 1 subtracted from 3 times 20. So to say any number in Yoruba, you are doing mathematical calculations. Egbata, that's Igba, Meta, that's 200 times 3. So to even say the number, you have to do mathematical calculations.
So this means that if we had gone by our languages, maths that people can write BEC like 20 times, it wouldn't be a problem.
It wouldn't be any problem. But that's the whole point. You understand?
Anyway, Doc, we thank you very much for coming. Maybe late, but next week we're going to be here early so that we can get more of these things. Thank you very much for passing through. But don't go where we'll have to take some pictures before you leave.
Wow. Too much. Yoruba is a mathematical language.
Every African language is a mathematical language. Every single African. We invented the
even
Igbo system. Even Igbo, even Chi, even Walla.
Okay, just gone by what Dr. Obandele come on, making everybody open their mouths in the studio right here, you know. So the show has been Good Morning Africa, and this and every Monday we'll be here to educate us, to take us back to the things that we did best and the things that we can refine now. My name is Kwame Bibinite. We are my sister Naya is happiness, and I've eaten into her time, and I thank her for her patience with us. I'm out.
This is the African who drove them out. You understand? So that's my own photograph. I went there to take a photograph of my ancestors because this is the first war of African liberation. We talk about trying to free ourselves from colonialism. This was the first war of African liberation 4,000 years ago. Driving our enemies out. They came as invaders. This African was able to drive them out. Now look at his skin. Is he white? But that's the reason why you don't see this image. And then even when you have a chance, you won't go to see it. You'll go to Israel, and you're identifying with your enemies. Your worst enemy. Everyone comes around and says, "Oh, that must be us." As soon as you read the book, you say, "Oh, those are the chosen people. I want to be chosen."
6 p.m.
You understand? Without realizing that 50% lies, 50% the idea of cutting the Red Sea, crossing the Red Sea, you can find that in stories before. The idea of the destruction of mankind by flood, all of that, we wrote all of that down. All of that. It's in our text, and you can read it carved into this very day that they are. But when I show you how
my lines is in this.
you say, what's it? Is it a bird? Is it a dog? Oh, look at the pretty pictures. So how can you access what your ancestors took the pains to drag a 3-ton stone? They dragged it for miles and miles. Then they carved one foot into the stone. But now we have